Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted a stronger, healthier, more loving relationship at any age, then do we have the Conscious Loving Ever After show for you. Today I'll be talking with Katie and Gay Hendricks, authors of over 30 books, including the bestsellers The Big Leap and 5 Wishes, and a very special look at relationships, Conscious Loving Ever After. And that's just what I want to talk with them about today, about how to create thriving relationships that last at any age. That, plus we'll talk about sledgehammers and feathers, gophers and Ojai, plump waistlines and plump bank accounts, how life changes once you're on Oprah, what in the world is the sushi factor, commuting to work on a tricycle, the importance of thin apple slices, and why remodeling a 100-year-old Victorian may be the ultimate test of marriage. Gotcha. So welcome to the show, Katie and Gay. Are you both ready to shine?
Yes, we are ready to shine. And first of all, thanks a lot for actually reading our books. You'd be surprised at how many interviewers have failed to do that one little thing.
You know, as I like to tell people, if you took the time to write the book, I should at least take the time to read it if I'm going to be talking to you about it.
Well, that's a proper orientation, Michael.
Thank you, and a mighty woohoo for having you on the show today.
Oh, thank you.
So before we dive right into things, I've got to ask, Katie, could you really dance before you could walk?
Yes. It's actually true because it's documented and it's written in my baby book, which I didn't discover until I was an adult. But my mother's first entry in it was that I loved to pull myself up in my crib and dance. So I believe I was dancing before I was walking. And I was also swimming in the ocean before I was walking.
I was a water baby too.
So I'm a water baby and a born dancer. And I really think that everybody has an inherent rhythm and groove that allows them to really dance through life rather than slogging along.
I love it. For this interview, I was compelled this morning. I just kept on playing over and over again the Beatles' All We Need Is Love and dancing to it as I'm finishing the book and taking my notes.
Oh, what a great idea. Multi-level learning, multi-sensory.
It seems to have worked. So from there, speaking about learning, how did your first day at school go?
Well, my first day
She has a good story about that. I have a good one, too.
Well, I started to read when I was about 3. I just was a voracious reader. So by the time I got into first grade, I was already reading. And so I came in and I sat down, and the teacher was very carefully writing letters on the board and handing out pieces of paper where people could start making letters. And you know, I looked around and I said, well, I already know how to do this. I already know how to write. I already know how to read. So I'm just going to go home. So I got up and I walked out.
Without the teacher noticing.
Without the teacher noticing.
That was
and
good.
I just made my way home. And I was so devastated when they made me go back.
Well, I had a early trauma my first day too, where I had to go out and stand in the hall. That was a big punishment. I was basically raised as an only child. My brother was a lot older than I was, so by the time I came along, he was pretty much gone, and so I didn't really play with other kids that much until I went to school. And the teacher asked me to pass this book to another kid that we were reading, and instead of passing it, I just shoved it across the table, and it skidded across the table and fell off onto the floor because he didn't catch it. And then she got mad about that for some reason and made me go stand out in the hall. And I thought that was tremendously unfair, you know.
You were already a professional, if I understand right. You had set up an office for counseling in your grandparents' living room.
That's right. When I was before I went to school, I got a tricycle for my birthday one year, and it was raining, so they allowed me to drive it around on my grandparents' big living room. And so I got my granddad to set me up a box in the corner, and I commuted to work on my tricycle and parked it outside. And I would sit in my office and I would wait for my clients who never came. But what I said was I was there to solve problems that people had, not physical problems. I said you could go to a regular doctor for that. I just solved these other kinds of problems, and nobody could ever figure out what I was talking about. So my family wasn't the kind of people that would admit to ever having a problem anyway. So I couldn't practice very much on them.
Yeah. So our livelihoods emerged very early. Our purpose emerged very early, and it's something that we share with people too. That your genius, what your purpose is, often is something that you loved to do as a child, and that was very easy for you, but that often maybe people around you, you thought maybe everybody could do it, but other people didn't often share those. So it makes for some translating.
Also, I was thinking about the dancing thing, how karmic it is for Katie, who was dancing before she could walk and became a dance therapist when I met her. I didn't learn to dance until I was 25. I was always one of those kids in high school that said, I can't dance or I don't dance. And then when I was 25, I had this great conversation with a guy named Jack Downing, who became kind of a mentor to me. And he said, he told me, you know, a lot of people, if they've got some kind of a problem, they don't necessarily talk about it. They turn on music and just dance to it. There's a whole field called dance therapy, which I'd never heard of at the time.
Oh, there's a synchronicity coming here.
Yeah. I said, well, I don't dance. I can't dance. And he said, oh, well, you don't have to know how to dance. He said, just go home today and put on some loud music and sway back and forth to the music. Yeah. And so I said, okay, I can do that. I can't dance, but I can do that. Right. And so I remember I put on the album by Pink Floyd called Dark Side of the Moon, which was brand new at the time. And so you can tell how long ago this was. This was 1971 or so. And I turned on that and just began to sort of find the beat and sort of flail back and forth from side to side. And so finally, I got to where I could dance a little bit. Fortunately, when I met Katie, that was one of my big requirements in life, that I find somebody that I could go out dancing with. So who better to marry but a dance therapist?
Woohoo! Before we dive into the book, you mentioned, Gay, at 25 that you started learning to dance, more or less swaying back and forth to Pink Floyd. Would you mind if you roll back to 24 and what your wake-up call was? Because you transformed your life.
Boy, did I ever. When I was 24, I weighed more than 300 pounds. I weigh 180 now. I'm 6 feet tall. So I'm at a normal weight for my body. But I was always obese as a kid. I was an obese baby, and I became an obese little boy, and then I became an obese teenager. So it was one of those things. I was taken around to different medical professionals to try to find some pituitary gland problem or thyroid gland problem. And I had all of those things, but nobody could figure out how to fix it. So when I was 24 years old, I weighed 320 pounds. I smoked 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I was working at a job I didn't like. I was in a relationship which was just killing me. And
you wore glasses?
And I wore big, thick glasses. So I had all these things that were not going well in my life. And I went out. I had a huge argument one day with the woman I lived with, Linda. And I went out for a walk to kind of clear my head. And it was a winter day. And I stepped on a patch of ice that was underneath some snow that I didn't see. And my feet shot out from under me, and I went down on my back and on the back of my head. I didn't knock myself out, like blackout, but I kind of knocked myself into a altered state of consciousness of some kind for about 2 or 3 minutes. I had this amazing thing happen while I was lying there on the frozen road. It was as if I could see down through all the layers of myself. I could see these feelings down inside that I'd never talked to anybody about, grief about my father's death, and angry about always being fat and always being a physical problem and being taken around to different medical specialists, and all these things I was angry about and sad about, but I'd never really touched into them, or certainly never talked to anybody about them. But underneath all of that, all that big ball of twine about my emotions, I could feel that there was this pure state of consciousness that didn't have any programming on it, that it was just a pure consciousness.
Wow.
And I realized we all have that, that we all have this pure consciousness underneath everything. And that's what we need to identify with. That's who we really are. We're not our programming, because if I'd grown up next door, I would have had different programming. Mm-hmm. So I realized this is the unifying thing that connects all human beings. And so I was very excited about that, and I was still laying on the ground shivering.
And you're shivering, but you're in an excited state.
Yes. And so I could feel my old personality kind of coming back and reassembling itself. I realized, oh, I still weigh 300 pounds. Oh, I still want a cigarette. Oh, I've still got my big, thick glasses on. I'm the same person as before. And then I said to myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes to live from that pure state of consciousness. I don't know what it takes, but I'm going to find what it takes. And so when I got back into my regular life, the first thing I started doing was only eating food that fed my pure consciousness rather than feeding my old obese body. Mm-hmm. And so I started discovering all these foods that I never ate, like vegetables, and blueberries, and fresh fruit. And so I began to eat a whole different way. And the first month, I think I lost something like 35 pounds. Wow. By just eating this new way. And then I had another magical thing happen. This was really woo-woo. A friend of mine came by one afternoon and said he was going to a lecture by an old Harvard professor of his, and he wanted to find out if I wanted to come with him. And I didn't know anything about this guy, but he said on the way, he said that this college professor of his at Harvard had just gotten back from India and had experienced some enlightenment and changed his life. And so I said, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about yoga or meditation. So we go into this place, which was Richard Alpert's father's big estate in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And there is Ram Dass. He's changed his name now from Richard Albert to Ram Dass. And he's got like 11 or 12 disciples around him, all these spacey young people dressed in silks and everything. And I remember one of them floated up to me and Neil and offered us bananas from this basket and all that.
Cool.
And I'm thinking, what is going on here? You know, what are these people selling? Because I didn't have any background in this. So we listened to this lecture by Ram Dass sitting out there on the lawn, and he spoke for 3 hours without any notes. And now and then he would just stop and he would start talking again, saying these most amazing things. And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, you know, I'm a teacher. I always have notes, even if I'm going to teach a 30-minute class. Mm-hmm. Where are you getting this stuff from? Where's it coming from? And he said, well, he just come back from India and he realized that we know everything inside. And if you just go down into this state of consciousness, you'll be inspired to say whatever you say. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what I experienced by hitting my head on the ground a couple of days before. And so I said, I may never see you again, which turned out I didn't see him again for probably 30 years or so. Yeah. But I said, I may never see you again. Can you give me some advice? Look at me. I weigh 300 pounds. I got these addictions. What should I do? And he said, well, why don't you do some breathing exercises? And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, in India, if you've got some kind of issue or problem, you might do some yoga or you might do some breathing exercises, or you might talk to a therapist about it. But, he didn't think too highly of that approach, but he was really big on this thing called breathing exercises. And so I said, where would I learn about something like that? And he said this amazing thing. He said, well, just pay attention. Something will come to you. You don't have to go looking for it. So a day or so later, I'm in the supermarket pushing my cart through the line, and I look to my left, and there on a little kiosk is a paperback book called Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation. And it was basically a book full of breathing exercises, yoga exercises, guided meditation.
And you got to remember, too, this was back in the early 70s, right?
No, this was in 1969.
1969. So there were no books like in the supermarket that you could find. So it was really remarkable. Nowadays, of course, you can find them, but just giving you the reference that this was very unusual.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how long ago it was. There were two types of paperback books. Some cost 95 cents and some cost 65 cents. And this was a 95-cent paperback. So this was like a high-end paperback. And so I bought the book and I took it home. And my partner was away visiting her mother over in Maine. And so I had the whole place to myself. And I just sat down about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I started doing the whole book, just one thing after the other, one exercise after the other. I did the yoga. And then I did the breathing. And then about midnight, I got to the meditation chapter. And by then, I'm pretty high anyway, from doing this stuff all day. But when I got to the meditation, it was a very simple meditation. You just close your eyes and you chanted Om, Om, Om in your mind. So the instructions were very simple. And I just started doing that. And suddenly, boom, that whole space of pure consciousness opened up in me. And there I was, till 3 o'clock in the morning, just doing Om and in that pure state of consciousness. And I'll tell you, it really changed my life. I don't think I've ever been the same since that night, because later on, I went to a Zen monastery, and later on I took TM training and other things like that. But just doing the stuff out of that book on my own was where that original big whoosh came from that I think I'm still riding off of today.
Katie, not that I'm expecting you to have anything similar, but do you have your own story of that sort?
I actually do, because remember me dancing in my crib? I continued to dance all through school, even though I had surgery on my left leg when I was a teenager, so I knew I couldn't professionally dance, but I loved dance, and I was always the person in my dance classes who said, why do we have to make all these strange movements that just are not connected to anything? Why can't we just move the way we feel? And of course, my dance teachers were despairing of me. But one day they said, there's this woman who's teaching a class that I think is for you. And so I made arrangements to go and be in this class. So imagine a dance room that's got a bare floor, bars on the floor, mirrors on one end. Yep. But when I walked in, what I saw was a group of middle-aged women coming across the floor, saying and dancing no. All of these different forms of no and no and no. And they were all parading across the floor. I'd never seen anything like it. And then they all sat in a circle with the instructor, and she said, Jung used to say that when there was a problem that you needed to engage with it with your active imagination, and one of the best ways to do that is through movement. And that was the life changer for me. I stopped everything I was doing. I decided I was going to do whatever this was, which I found out was dance movement therapy. And as it turned out, I was able to take some lessons from her, and she worked in a psychiatric facility in Santa Barbara, and I did my senior thesis, and then they invited me to come to staff meetings, and then suddenly I was doing day treatment, and then suddenly I was apprenticing to become a dance therapist long before there were any graduate schools, and got this fabulous education in a psychiatric facility that was really the most innovative of its time, because patients could see their own files, could come to staff meetings. They ran their own halfway house. So it was incredibly innovative and empowering for everybody. And that's where I started, just from, yes, wanting to have everybody move.
So if people are so many people have either emotions that they're afraid to feel, they're stuffing down, then if we dance, if we get moving, I like to take them out to nature and get moving out in nature. But if we do some sort of movement, we help bring that up and get that out.
Yes, because the part of the brain that deals with language is only a very small part of ourselves. It's tiny, actually, whereas the rest of ourselves, that there's a whole world unto itself. And breathing led me to Katie in a way, because I felt so in love with breathing. Later on, I was getting my PhD at Stanford in counseling psychology, and I started using breathing with my clients. Like if they were stuck on some emotion, they couldn't get in touch with sadness, I would ask them to take some breaths and open up the place in their body that they felt the feelings in. So I found it a very good facilitator of emotional growth. And so I became better and better and actually started writing a little book on breathing. I've since then published 3 different books on breathing, which may be some sort of a record, I think, to write 3 different books on breathing. Most people, when I was writing my first book on breathing, I was a university professor, and my colleagues would say, "You're writing a book on breathing? What is it going to be, chapter 1? Take an in breath, chapter 2, take an out breath." So I
people they say there's nothing to be learned about breathing, and yet they're up here and not actually taking a real breath.
So I began, after I got my doctorate, I began teaching workshops in breathing and body-centered therapy, different kinds of techniques in body-centered therapy. And I also joined a dance therapy group. I was in a dance therapy group for a while. But anyway, what happened was I came to where Katie was getting her PhD and was on the faculty at a place called Institute for Transpersonal Psychology. And I came there to teach a workshop on breathing and body-centered therapy techniques. And there across the crowded room, I saw the person that I was kind of immediately fascinated by, was the most beautiful human being I'd ever seen in my life. And I decided to try to make up a good reason to get over and talk to her on one of the breaks. But as a matter of fact, she came over and talked to me on one of the breaks.
Yeah, I came up to ask him a question at the break, and I actually never got the question out of my mouth. And to this day, I can't remember what the question was, because he said, first thing out of his mouth was, "I'm very attracted to you."
There's an honest approach. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it got even more honest. I said, I've got to tell you something. I'm very attracted to you, but I want to tell you also that I just had a big wake-up experience in my life where I realized I mess up every relationship the same way, by either not telling the truth or not keeping my agreements or not taking responsibility for things. And literally, Michael, I just had this awareness the month before. And I said, so I've realized that the only way I can have relationships work is if both people are committed to being absolutely honest, and both people are committed to taking responsibility for their lives, and both people are committed to keeping their agreements with each other. On those terms, would you like to go have a cup of coffee with me? And so that was our first date. That was my first pickup line.
That was his first pickup line. So on my side, what I heard was, okay, listen, I don't care what you're doing. I want you to drop everything. I don't know what's going on in your life, but I want you to drop everything. I want you to come to Colorado with me for this amazing adventure. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I want you to come. What do you think? So it took me about 15 seconds. And so I came back with, how about lunch? So
there we are. The rest that was 38 years ago, by the way, and we've hardly spent a moment apart since.
What is fascinating is watching, and you're experts on this. You teach on this, but it's very clear as you're telling the story for people who aren't able to visualize or see this. You are both locked in eye contact, in a gaze. While you're speaking to me, you are in a sense all that matters. You're present with me. We'll talk more about presence in a bit, but there is such a deep connection between you guys. It's really, really special.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you seeing that. One time we were on a talk show up in Portland many years ago when Conscious Loving first came out, the first Conscious Loving book, not the new one that you held up, but the one we were on Oprah with and everything. We were on a talk show in Portland, and afterwards the host came over to me and he said, "Dr. Hendricks, I noticed that you have a very special way when your wife is talking. You're really connected with her. It's as if you're really interested in what she's saying." And he said, "Where did you learn to do that?" It was like it was some technique. And I said, "Guess what? I'm actually really interested in what she's saying. And the guy said, okay.
Yeah, I have to see how I can fake that. Yeah.
I'll tell you, though, to this day, I love music, but I've never heard any music from Mozart or anyone else that was as beautiful to me as just the sound of Katie's voice. So anything she says is going to just resonate in my heart.
I love it. So I want to talk about how you've cultivated this and all things of that sort. Before I do that, have to kind of following a Joseph Campbell arc of things. You had some troubles at one point, and I guess you were in your 40s. It may have been renovating a 100-year-old house that was part of those troubles.
I think it was actually Gay's 50th birthday. That was the catalyst. And so we were at a party for somebody else's birthday, and Gay comes over and announces that he's incredibly attracted to a woman who's about half my age. And that started a whole process that lasted really months, where we got to practice everything that we'd written about in Conscious Loving, especially what's really true. What am I feeling? What is it that I really want? Can I really listen to you? And it also, I think, led to us creating what we now call a no-blame relationship, because we realized that in order to really continue loving and supporting each other, we needed to eliminate each other as an object of criticism or blame, because that just kept the whole thing going.
It was a powerful moment because I had this feeling of attraction, and we'd been together, Katie and I had been together about 15 years, and I hadn't really ever felt any attraction during that time to anyone else. And something about this situation, maybe it was just that I'd turned 50 and I was feeling kind of rusty, and I'd gained a little weight. I was over 200 pounds instead of 180 where I like to be. And so I was feeling kind of rusty. I was still working at the university, kind of not liking that. So anyway, things were not going really great. And I think what eventually came out was it really didn't have anything to do with sex or sexuality in the long run. And I'm glad it didn't turn into a physical affair, because that would have taken us down a whole other thing. But I realized that I've fallen out of love with myself. I've gotten rusty. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't feel that vibrance that I used to feel. And of course, getting attracted to a 25-year-old is a way of really jazzing up your life very quickly. And but the thing I feel proud about is we were very honest with each other. I told her from the very beginning, I feel very attracted to this person. I don't know where it's going to go. I know we're not going to have a sexual relationship or anything yet or anything like that, but I just want to be honest about it. And so we started sharing with each other, and it took months actually for it all to work itself out. In the long run, I realized, it didn't have anything to do with this lovely young woman. It had to do with me having fallen out of love with the creative juice in myself. And once I fell back in love and owned my creativity again, it's like immediately I realized, boy, how did I ever feel attracted to her? She's a fine person and everything, but it was like the feeling of attraction just disappeared right away as soon as I connected again with my own creativity. And, if you look up a textbook of what people go through when they have a 50-year-old midlife crisis, it's pretty much the same thing. And I felt very embarrassed about that, because I used to teach a course on that in graduate school, and suddenly,
yes. Yeah. And for me, Michael, the whole process was a polishing of really letting go of aspects that we call personas, roles that I had learned that weren't really me. And those got polished off so that what really emerged from that was who I am and loving myself and valuing myself. So I think for both of us, it was our way of getting to an unshakable sense of our own lovability that we could then bring to create a whole new relationship with each other.
You talk about needing to love yourself or fall in love with yourself, or a 24/7 love affair with yourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell me? Well, first off, let's go back to that instance. There's so many directions we can go with it. There's integrity, which I'm going to want to talk about. There's creative essence, which I'm going to want to talk about. But I guess first off, Katie, how did you handle that? How did you process that when you first heard that?
Oh, well, I felt as if I were going to be sick. That was the first thing that happened, was that the bottom of my stomach dropped out. So I knew I was really, really scared. So I did lots and lots of journaling. I did lots of moving. I did lots of expressing. So right away, I committed to learning whatever there was for me to learn from this, because I didn't really have an end point. I didn't know what was going to happen. So being in that unknown was really invigorating. I think that year I taught more seminars around the world that I have either some prior or since that. It awakened a new level of my own creativity. Mm-hmm. So when I got together with Gay, I just admired you so much and loved listening to you and thought you were really such a source of wisdom that I had forgotten that I could get that from myself as well. And so I really came back home to myself over a period of of weeks and months. And it really had, all kinds of, things that would occur. And then we'd talk about it, and then things would kind of shift a little bit, and then something else would occur. And so we didn't push it. We didn't try to, we didn't try to leap ahead of what was actually happening. And I just want to really appreciate you for diving into this, since we wrote a book called The Conscious Heart, all about this and some other related issues, and hardly anybody ever wants to talk to us about it, which I think is very interesting, that we've actually navigated something that occurs for lots of couples in a way that could be of support to people. But I think it's still something that, people just don't want to look at.
Especially the fact that we went through it, and what saved us was just being honest with each other about it.
Yeah, that was the big one.
We've been on talk shows where we talk about just being honest with each other about, I feel attracted to another person. And people in the audience always go, ooh, telling the truth is dangerous, and lying is the way to go about it. And so we found the exact opposite to be true, that if there's anything that you aren't willing to be absolutely honest about in your life, that thing has a grip on you like a peg that's holding you to the ground. And so to get the freedom, you have to actually be willing to be honest about anything that's going on in your life. And that's where you get that energy from, and that connection with direct creative essence.
Let's go from there. And I want to we may come back to this very topic when we talk about integrity. I want to get to there shortly. But can you tell us, what is creative essence, and what does it mean that you both started to lose yours?
Well, we have experienced that essence is who you are at your core, your direct connection with you, but also your direct connection with life, with the sense of life that's bigger than you. And what we ask people sometimes is, if you let go of this aspect of you, would you still recognize yourself? And if you would still recognize yourself, then you're coming closer and closer to your core. Mm-hmm. Also, your essence is really much more your being and your ability to presence yourself here and now, and to be able to connect with you and to be able to connect with others. And really the purpose of all of our work is to reveal essence. And what we find is that people's essence gets covered over with roles that they learn to help get them attention and keep them out of trouble. And that sometimes those roles get kind of hardened, and you mistake your roles for who you are at your core. So when you start to peel back those roles, what can emerge is this flow of creativity that is at the heart of all of us.
We have another book called The Big Leap, which talks about something that we all have inside called your zone of genius. And it's really the same thing as your creative essence. It's what you most love to do. It's what you're doing when you feel most in touch with yourself and most in touch with the universe around you. And I think everybody has a zone of genius in them, but we don't get a lot of encouragement to find that, in regular life. So one of the things I wanted to do in the Big Leap is show people, yeah, that is available. And all you need to do to find it is keep opening up more to finding out what you most love to do and what makes you feel most expanded and alive. And that's a key to you finding your zone of genius.
And what we recommend is that you spend just 10 minutes a day to start with doing something that you love to do. So whether that's, like for me, moving and drawing, or whether it's creating a new soup, or humming and singing in the backyard, but that you give yourself 10 minutes, and then that creates a new blueprint for the day where your sense of creativity can begin to permeate the day without it being like a task or a chore. It becomes a new foundation for your aliveness.
Going from that, and you're saying take 10 minutes a day, then what is the importance of making a commitment to yourself?
Well, commitment is powerful piece of our work, because if you come in here to our office, we're sitting in one of our offices right now, and if you come in here and you've got a problem that you've had for 29 years, let's say a couple comes in and they tell us we've been having basically the same argument for 29 years, something has got to happen to shift that and take you out of the state of consciousness of that recycling argument into a new place to start from. And commitment is the place to start from, because the original word commitment in Latin has to do with bringing your resources together and setting out toward a destination. So a commitment is you gather your resources and pick a place you want to go and make a step in that direction. So when people come in here and they've had the same issue for umpteen number of years, we ask them to start with a brand new commitment. A commitment to really honoring each other, or a commitment to listening to each other, or a commitment to not blaming the other person. Right. That's a big one.
Or a commitment to resolving the issue. So, what is it as important as commitment is recommitting, because committing sets you off in the direction, then almost immediately there's going to be a distraction or a problem. And then what I used to do is I go, oh God, I was concealing after I made this commitment to reveal, and then I'd beat up on myself for a while. And then I would get back into sharing again and being open. And I realized that whole beating up of myself, that's arbitrary. That's completely unnecessary. That the quicker I could get back to recommitting, the quicker I'd be moving again in my chosen direction. So we really think committing and recommitting are major tools for people along the relationship journey.
Excellent. Can you tell us what it means to turn towards consciousness?
Yes, in any given situation, you can move toward less consciousness or more consciousness. And less consciousness usually means going through the same stereotypical programmed behavior that you've been doing before. It would be if I'd clung to my I can't dance position.
And dance is stupid.
And why would anybody want to get out there and make a fool of themselves like that? But turning toward consciousness means opening up to a new possibility. It means realizing, wow, there is a part of me that would love to know how to dance. I've just shut that part of myself away. And so anytime, we call it heliotroping, because a flower, a heliotrope, will turn toward the sun. And that's its very nature. But as human beings, we often get programmed to turn away from consciousness and do things the same old way. And so that's the big barrier that most people have to overcome, is the force of habit, the force of having done things. A couple will be in here and they've had the same argument basically every month for 20 years. And so to be able to step out of that, you really do need to start with a commitment and then usually 10 minutes a day of practice in some way. Daily discipline is a really important thing, just doing something differently for 10 minutes a day. And one thing, maybe if we have time before we end, we ask people just to go in a room for 10 minutes and think loving thoughts toward themselves, or simply the mantra, I love myself unconditionally. So something that will just shift you out of your normal state of consciousness.
And at a practical level, Michael, it really is as simple as feeling where you're closed and letting yourself choose to open. So you might feel closed in your chest, and you can give some attention to that and appreciate yourself for feeling closed, and then find some new way to open and see what happens to you from that openness. Because we know that a growth mindset is the best indicator of success in your life and your relationships, and that there are places where we get stuck are places where we have closed.
One thing we also teach people in the very beginning is something really profound, and from a scientific perspective is easy to explain too. It only takes about 3 big, easy breaths to start changing the stress chemistry in your body. So if you add another element to that, if you take 3 deep breaths and change your body position, that really does begin to move you toward greater consciousness. So, for example, we'll have a couple in here and we'll suggest to them, just take 3 easy breaths right now and changing your body position. They'll be sitting there like this, mad at each other, and they'll go, I'll say, change your body position. Or now, and suddenly things are shaken up and released, and they can then look at things a little bit differently. But just remember, it only takes those 3 big, easy breaths to start changing your stress chemistry in your body.
What is the upper limit problem?
Oh, the upper limit problem is one of our favorite discoveries, that what we've seen is that people have a thermostat setting for how good they can feel and how good they can feel about themselves and in relationship. And that thermostat setting was really set by other people. It's as if you walked into a party and literally the thermostat was already set. And so when you exceed the thermostat setting for how good you can feel or how much love you can give and receive, you do something that's generally unconscious to bring yourself back to a more familiar level. And inside most people as individuals, that's criticizing. That's one of the most common ways of, like, who do you think you are? And now, whoa, that was really a mess up. But in partnership, it's usually criticism and blame of each other that brings the setting back down again. And we began to notice in our relationship, we would be feeling really good and close to each other, and then one or the other of us would bring up something,
and criticize
the other, or say, "Ooh, gosh, what's that?" Or get sleepy, or break an agreement. So we really started to look at what is the issue here, and we realized that we've come from thousands of generations that got here by noticing what was wrong, by being really skillful at noticing where the threat was and being vigilant. That, our lackadaisical ancestors are no longer here because they got taken out. So it's really relatively recent in history that we've had the luxury to look at, how can I expand my ability to enjoy life going well, to enjoy giving and receiving more love? And that is what we call the one problem, that we can trade in all of our other problems for really, is this representing I've hit my ceiling, really how much intimacy I can enjoy right now, and I'm doing something to mess it up. And then we can get back on track because you can recommit to enjoying giving and receiving more love every day.
Woohoo! So, and part of that is we're shooting to get to, in essence, a blame-free relationship, or at least a blame-free zone.
A blame-free zone,
yes. And we can tell you it's very powerful because we've created a blame-free zone in our lives that goes back, many, many, many years. It's been many years since either one of us have said anything critical to the other person. In fact, I don't think we've said anything critical to each other since we've lived in this house, which is about 15 or 16 years now. So that's something that creates a big field of easygoing connection to your creative essence. Because if you don't have people, then you have an opportunity to really help each other, facilitate each other's creativity.
And you have lots of free time.
Yeah.
Just really, because how much is going on, like rebutting and rehearsing and getting back at, and that takes up a lot of space in your mind. And when you're not doing that, you really have a lot of open space for creativity and for intimacy and for sharing.
We had a couple in here once who were themselves psychologists and personal growth experts, and they had started writing a book together, and they'd gotten into such a power struggle with it that the book went by the wayside, and they got into 10 years of struggle. And at the time, I didn't realize. I said, well, when were you working on the book? I thought they were going to say last month or something like that. They said, no, 10 years ago. They'd been locked in a power struggle for 10 years that came out of trying to work on a creative project together. So what you have to do is make big commitments to your own personal growth and make big commitments to your partner's personal growth, to being a facilitator of your partner's personal growth as well as a facilitator of your own. And if both of you can make those kind of really big commitments, then you've got some real magic you can draw on.
It is such a different way to look at a relationship. I think it's ultimately everything. Your partner is your teacher, and if you get that, it changes your perspective on everything. But for most people, it's happily ever after once the ring goes on, and so none of this should even come up. That's just not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that is truly a fairy tale. The whole, and they lived happily ever after. There was a great book that came out about 20 years ago that started with, and they lived happily ever after. And then the next day, like, what? You throw your socks on the floor and you don't let me do what I want to do. So the opportunity in relationship is not only to love yourself, but is to use your relationship as an avenue for each of you to open up to more of the possibility of consciousness moving through you. So most people also, I just want to say, have this illusion that relationship is really hard work, full of compromise. It just keeps getting worse. And we want to say that we've found that it can just keep getting better. And in our new book, Conscious Loving Ever After, we really talk about the sort of the signposts and the skills that you need to learn, which are not difficult, but do need practice, that can make that true for you.
Let's talk real briefly, because we got to sort of get to wind things. This is just, everybody, you want to go out, get Conscious Loving Ever After. It is going to help or save your relationship and help with dating too, something we won't have time to really get into today. But let's talk at least about one or two of these skills, and then we'll wrap things up and do a meditation here in a bit. The 2 10-minute conversations a week. I found this super powerful.
Yes.
Yes. One conversation is about stuff, like what needs fixing around the house, who's going to pick up Kevin after soccer practice tomorrow. And one conversation is about feelings. It's a heart talk. So we have a stuff talk and a heart talk. Most couples screw up by talking about stuff all the time. Like
who needs to do what, and
who
the
needs to do
plumbing,
what,
and what's broken.
You're sitting in front of the fireplace having a nice moment, and then all of a sudden, who's going to, or why didn't you get the upstairs toilet repaired this week? And, it destroys the intimacy. So we say you can handle all your stuff in a nice 10 or 20 minute conversation on Tuesday night, and you can handle all your heart stuff, your stuff that you might be upset about or want to air out with the other person. Do that in a separate conversation, but don't try to do the whole thing at the same time.
One of the other things we talk about is how to create a no-blame relationship, and the actual steps, starting with commitment, but then the steps along the way that can make that real for you. And I'll tell you, the payoff for that is that for me, I feel I can let gay all the way in, and to really feel this deep connection with him, and that I can not only go all the way into Gay, but I can go through him into an experience. I have the most cosmic experiences being in touch with Gay because I can feel the universe through him. So it creates this field where he's kind of like all men and all possibility for me that creates this delicious experience of presence that we get to live in all the time. And that's a big payoff.
There is a thank you for sharing on that. Going along those lines, he brings to you a foundation, and part of that is integrity. And you talk about in your book, integrity being sexy, and a level of honesty he's willing to share, and partnership of teaming out that I'm not here to hurt you or to put you down. I'm here to support you. And that foundation, I think, is what you're talking about, of giving you the ability to be open-hearted and expand into the universe from there.
Yes, that's absolutely true. The fact that integrity is really a way of lining up so that everything in you is matching and congruent. And that allows the universe to move through you without running into any log jams or rocks along the way. And it creates this juicy creativity and aliveness that is not only great to experience, but it's great to be around.
Woohoo! Where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book?
Well, thank you. They can go to Amazon or really any bookstore and find Conscious Loving Ever After. And you can also go to our website, Hendricks.com, and find lots of videos and relationship tips and articles that will really assist you to create the relationship that you want.
Hendricks.com is probably the best place to go because there's a lot of different resources there, videos of us talking about different things and lots of learning resources there. And also, we still teach seminars. Katie's about to go to Berkeley to do one and then about to go to Europe to do a few more in May. So we're all over the place. I kind of stay home and write books, and Katie is our roving ambassador for going out and doing a lot of teaching.
Woohoo! What personally brings both of you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Just for me, it's daily being able to be in the field of your consciousness, being in the field of your love, being in the field of your awareness is to me a nutrient like nothing else. You know, I thrive on that being in the space of love that Katie creates.
Yes. Well, back at you with the addition of how much your voice is a resonant grounding for me, that, you know, the beauty of life and the creativity of life. And so just the exchange we do, you know, like ball tossing of creativity throughout the day. And to me, that is just the most fun. And
we go out dancing a lot together.
Yes, and we go out dancing.
Awesome. I know we got to let you get going. We got to jump into a real brief meditation. Any last words of wisdom you want to share?
Well, when you graduate from one of our seminars, you get a little wristband, a little silicone wristband that says, breathe, move, love. And so if you just remember three things, move your body and love as much as you can from wherever you are.
Woohoo! Well, thank you so much, Katie and Gay. Katie, let's let you get going. Gay, did you have a very short meditation you want to join? Blessings, love, and light. Thank you so much for joining us.
Our pleasure. Yes. Well, here's something that everybody can do. Take a moment right now. You can close your eyes or open them either way, and circulate first the thought through your mind, which is, I love myself unconditionally. So just say that a few times in your mind. I love myself unconditionally. I love myself unconditionally. Just repeat it a few times in your mind. Just say it to yourself in your own tone of voice. Now add something new to that, which is say the words and then pause for 10 seconds to actually feel love for yourself. So I love myself unconditionally, and then 10 seconds of just a couple of easy breaths of love for yourself. And then say it again. I love myself unconditionally. And then 2 or 3 easy breaths of feeling that love for yourself. Because you can really only love another person to the extent that you can love yourself. So the place to start, the best place to start is always within. And just taking a little time out of the day each day to create a sense of loving acceptance for yourself. And you'll be amazed at how far that goes with other people also.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Gay. It has been a true pleasure and a treat. And exercise I like to do, you're making me think of now, is putting my hand over my chest and going, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And it really all starts from there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So
thank you for asking great questions.
Thank you so much. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get conscious, loving ever after, and crank up your love life today and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Gay.
Thank you. Many blessings to you.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!